Welcome back. As we observe Mother's Day, we are celebrating mothers of the struggle. I'm joined in studio by Minister of Small Business Development, Lindiwe Zulu, to talk to us about her time in exile and being away from her family. A very good morning to you and happy Mother's Day.
Thank you very much. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers of South Africa and mothers of the world.
Right. There's a question that I've been dying to ask you. It relates to an image. You're sitting on the couch. You have two weapons with you. A book and what I'm assuming is an AK-47 right next to it. Unfortunately, we can't bring it up because it did distort. I'm curious to find out the story behind that picture.
My husband took that picture in Uganda way back 1990, I think. I was part of the contingent of cadres who used to be in Uganda. After we had to leave Angola because part of the independence of Namibia, part of the conditions for the independence of Namibia was the withdrawal of MK from Angola. So the ANC had to find different places for us, and Uganda was one of those places. And I worked in the office in Uganda, but my husband and the rest of the comrades were in the camps. So on that particular day, I was miserable. I was fearing what punishment I was going to get because we had traveled from Kampala in town and our car got stuck on the way, and so we had to leave the car and walk kilometers and kilometers before we got to the camp. Now, the fact that the car broke down for the commanders in the camp is not their story. Why did the car break down? Do you understand what could have been the consequences of you when your car breaks down in a rebel territory?
But this is something that's beyond your control.
No, it can't be beyond our control. When you leave one spot or one place to the next, you've got to make sure that everything is perfect because your life could have been in danger. That's what would have. So I got there, I was exhausted after walking more than 40 kilometers, exhausted, tired, and you can see in that picture that I was completely burnt out because the temperatures there used to go very high to 40 degrees. So we all had to walk to get to the camp. So I was very exhausted, but I was also like, I'm tired. And he kept on taking the pictures and I was like, dude, stop. I don't want the pictures, I'm tired. But the book, I think, is what was also interesting. I'm a bookworm. I read anything that comes my way because I believe that in books you are always going to get one thing or the other. And besides, if you've got a good book in your hand, no matter how upset you are, if you just focus yourself into your book, then you will come down.
Do you remember what book you were reading?
I can't remember what book I was reading, but I think it was a Russian book. Because I studied at that time, I was rereading some of the books that I read at university because I did those books in Russian. And so I was now going back to reading them in English. I can't remember really the book, but I know that I was reading some series, whether it was Pushkin or whoever, I don't know. I can't remember the book. And unfortunately, I can't see the writing of which book it was. I used to read a lot. I still read a lot even now.
Right. Yeah. Let's talk about motherhood. You're a mother of 4, and
Yes.
2 of your children, you had them in exile.
Yes.
And as we celebrate Mother's Day today, do you sometimes go back to that time? And if you do, what do you think about?
We always go back, and I think I should start by also celebrating, obviously, all the mothers that were with me at the time of after 76. And I think we need to just celebrate mothers in general because mothers carry a lot. And on Mother's Day, we want to focus on happiness. On Mother's Day, we don't want to think about some of the challenges that we go through. But sometimes you have to go back into how you got to where you are. 3 of my children actually were born in exile. 2 I left in 1979 when they were very, very small. I must say Happy Mother's Day to them too because they're now mothers. Yes, they're mummies. So I have grandchildren. So You know, we're so focused on what we want to see South Africa for the future that sometimes we hardly think about the hardships that we had to go through. Here I was at the age of 19. I had 2 children. The 2 children at the age of 19 is a story on its own. The pain of my grandmother, who had to contend with me having 2 children too early in life when all she wanted was for me to go to school. That's a story for another day,
Right.
because what the expression of my grandmother and the anger and the disappointment, I think that it was a disappointment of thousands of other mothers of South Africa who wanted us to be better people, and we just went into the wrong direction. But it's many years down the line, so I'm celebrating those children now because they have their own children, and I have absolutely a very good relationship with them. All my children, I have the good relationship with them, except for the one that I had when I was a student in Moscow, who went with his dad to Guyana, where they live. That's another story for another day.
When you detail the story about your time in Uganda and having to walk for over 40 kilometers, I mean, you've endured some of the most treacherous conditions. What was life like in exile for mothers, especially young mothers like yourselves?
The pain of mothers in exile was the fact that many of them had left their children in South Africa. Because when you joined the African National Congress or joined the PAC or joined any other organization and you went out to exile, you didn't carry your children along with you. It was just you and the fact that you've joined the liberation movement for purposes of fighting so that your own children in future might live a better life. And I think if I look at my children now and I look at most of our children, they're in a better space than where we were, because then we have freedom in South Africa today. And for me, it's important that we celebrate the mothers who were in the struggle. It was very painful to be out there not knowing what is happening to your children. Even if you knew that your children were with your parents, it wasn't the same. You were not there. They didn't know you. My children didn't know me. My 2 girls didn't know me. When I came back from exile, I had to start a completely fresh relationship. The worst part is the fact that when we were in exile, we could not even communicate with our family. We couldn't communicate with our family because communicating was danger to them. Communicating was alerting the apartheid regime as to where you were. So it was a painful process of 15, 20 years where mothers at home didn't know where their children were, but mothers who were in exile didn't know what was happening to their children at home. And I do think that we still need to go back and have the conversations, because I think for the nation to really heal from that point of view,
Right.
we're not asking for anything but just a recognition of what mothers had to go through. We need to share that with yourselves as young people, because then when Mandela said never and never again, you must have an appreciation of what was he talking about, because young people today don't know. They can read, they can see movies, and we're not writing enough,
Right.
and there are not enough movies for them to watch. I think we still do need to take a step back and say what actually happened, how did you cope, how did you manage, what went through into your day-to-day life. Our day-to-day life was thinking about what needs to be done to liberate South Africa.
We'll talk about the old generation and the new generation and the next generation of women that are coming out after this short break. Let's take a short break. We continue our conversation with Small Business Development Minister, Lindiwe Zulu. Do stay with us.